14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8. Ignition sequence start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Launch commit. Liftoff. We have liftoff with Apollo.
Isn't that exciting? This is week 3. This is the third time we've ever gathered here at 3rd and Lindsley for Rhythm City Church gatherings on Sunday morning, and we're still going to keep on celebrating. Isn't it cool that we're launching a brand new church in Nashville? I think that's kind of something to clap for. It's so fun to get to be a part of this, and we're just praying, God, would you continue to teach us not just how to gather people to ourselves or even fill a room, but God, would you shape us to be servants towards your city? And we're just praying that God would do that. So thanks for being here this morning. Excited to be alongside you in the journey. And really, before we jump into Trajectory Week 3, there's a couple of things that I just want to share with you. Today, there is a show coming in, and they start at 2 o'clock. Load in and doors open are at 1 o'clock, which means we got to get out of here quickly today, quicker than most weeks. We are so grateful to be able to be at 3rd and Lindsley. This is such a great venue. In fact, so many of my friends, whether they're churched or not churched, they all know where 3rd and Lindsley is. And even if you've never been to a concert here or hung out with friends here or had lunch here during the week, you still know where 3rd and Lindsley is because it's at the corner of 3rd and Lindsley, which is just awesome. So it's easy to let people know, hey, this is where you can come join us. It's a safe place for you to worship with us. And so part of having that relationship with 3rd and Lindsley is that sometimes there are shows coming in right after us. And we're excited about that. In fact, if you want to go to a show later today, hang around, go to a show, and support 3rd and Lindsley. We love what they do here and are excited to be partnering with them. One of the other things, too, is that in about a month, in fact, a month from today, we're actually going to have absolutely no worship gathering here on Sunday morning. Instead, the day before that, on October 26th, in fact, grab a pen or a piece of paper on the table in front of you. Grab a pen, write this down. October 27th, which is a Sunday, no worship gathering here on Sunday morning. In fact, take the day off, go worship somewhere else. If you want to worship at our mother church, Our Savior Lutheran Church down on Franklin Road, go worship with them. For all of you that serve here week in and week out, doing all the heavy lifting, you're here at 8:45, 9 a.m., take that Sunday off because the day before that, and you're invited, your friends are invited, doesn't matter if they have a church home or they do or they don't, if they're Christian or they're not, man, we want to serve with them. So on the Saturday the 26th, we're going to set up an all Rhythm City Church service day where we're going to go out into the community and somehow serve. That may be painting something, that could be cleaning something, it could be working with children, it could be all kinds of different things. We're going to have more details to you coming up, but make sure that's on your calendar. No worship here on the 27th. Instead, everybody's out being the church instead of just going to church. If you're new, that's something that we really talk about a lot. We're not here just to go to church, like be here on Sunday morning, but to be the church. Jesus didn't die for bricks and mortar. He died for his bride, the church, so that they could go out and be the church in the community. So we're going to do that very practically on Saturday the 26th. Make sure that's on your radar. Clear it of all other things. Be ready to go and serve. Last announcement before we dig into week 3 of Trajectory is that this afternoon you have a great opportunity to serve. In fact, Kyle and Aaron Martin, will you guys just wave your hand wherever you're at? Aaron's right here, Kyle's here, the kiddos are probably next door, I'm assuming. Awesome. They had a baby a couple of weeks ago, and now they're moving in the same month, which probably means, if you're like me, you're thinking, oh, they probably could use a little bit of help moving. Excellent. Glad you thought that, because this afternoon, we're going to go over to their house, and we're going to load a truck and drive over to their new place and unload the truck. And whichever part you can be however much of that you can be a part of, please come and serve. I'm going to show up, so that means if more of you show up, then that's less work I have to do. So come and join me and Kyle and Aaron. We're going to have pizza there for you. You don't have to pay anything for it. We're going to order the pizza so you can be fed. head over there after this, and here's what we're going to do. I asked for their permission so I can give you their address. You can tweet it, you can Facebook it. They're not going to live there after today, so it's all good. Write down their address right now. Even if you're not going, write it down, just so you make them feel good like you're all writing it down, okay? Here's their address. It's 100 Mountain High Drive. 100 Mountain High Drive. Apartment number 131. It's in Antioch. It's just off of Interstate 24. It's in Tennessee, which is good. You don't have to drive that far. And zip code is 37013. 100 Mountain High Drive, apartment number 131 in Antioch, just down the road. If you can come and help for just a little bit, that'd be awesome. Erin can't carry little Desmond and Dexter and Ellie in her arms the whole day, so they need help carrying all their furniture too. So if you can help do that, quick run home, grab a change of clothes if you need to, and then head over there and help us load the truck. All right, let's jump into week 3 of Trajectory. The last 2 weeks we've been kind of going through this idea of launching the church in this trajectory that God has us on, and what it looks like for us to serve this city and be on the correct trajectory. And you know, what's interesting about the idea of launching is that we see examples of it all the time, don't we? In fact, just about 5 or 6 weeks ago, I was on a flight out to Washington, D.C., and Mia didn't know about this, to go ask her dad for her hand in marriage. It was a complete surprise. Nobody knew about it. But let me tell you, I went through the ringer trying to get out there. That morning, I had like a 7:30 flight out of Nashville up to Chicago and then over to Washington, D.C. And the flight to Chicago got a little bit delayed. We all got on the plane. They got on and said, we're having a little bit of complication. Or sounded more like, we're having a little complication. You know, like got over the speaker and said, we're having a little bit of a complication. We have a computer malfunction. And across the whole plane, everybody goes, you know, you can just feel that. You've heard it yourself. So about 10 minutes goes by, and I'm looking at my clock because I only had 40 minutes of a layover in Chicago before I was off to D.C. Looking at the clock, okay, we gotta hurry up. 10 minutes goes by, they get on the speaker again and they say, actually, if your destination is Cincinnati and Pittsburgh, you need to get off the plane because you're gonna miss your flight out of Chicago. We need to reroute you through another city. So about 6 or 7 people get off the plane. 10 more minutes goes by. They name 5 cities. So if you're going to these 5 cities, you gotta get off the plane because you're not gonna make your connection in Chicago. So about 20 people get off the plane. Now everybody's starting to think, well, what about my connection? What about my flight? What about my destination? About 10 more minutes goes by and they say, actually, if you're going to any city, you need to get off the plane. Because we're not going to get out of here on time. You're all going to miss your flights. We're not going to get to Chicago. So everybody unloads. And you can just imagine what it sounds like, right? I mean, everyone's just grumbling and whining and complaining. And I've got a meeting and you've got this and we got to get there and my family this. And all I'm thinking is like, your guys' excuses are good and everything. But I've got a really important question to ask somebody today. And I got to make sure I get there because I had a flight back to Nashville at about 6 o'clock that night. So I get off the plane and I go up to that booth, you know, with the very friendly attendant who just loves it when there's a line of 30 people deep, you know, just waiting to complain and talk about how they need to get in there and everything. And I said, man, you just don't understand. Like, I'm going to ask my girlfriend's dad for her hand in marriage today. You gotta get me to Washington, D.C. Sir, the earliest we can get you in there is 4:30. But my return flight's at 6, so I wouldn't even be able to leave the airport, let alone have a conversation with her dad. So I'm thinking, what am I going to do? And I wanted to be able to get back that night so then she would have no idea I was gone, right? I have to get back that night so I can see her. She won't know that I was gone. So I said, Baltimore's not too far from Washington, D.C. Can you get me to Baltimore? He said, yeah, we can get you to Baltimore. In fact, you'll get there at about the same time you were going to get there if you were flying through Chicago out to Dulles in Washington, D.C. So I said, good enough, get me to Baltimore. I called her dad, said, I feel really bad, but you're going to have to drive an hour and a half farther. He lives 5 minutes from the other airport that I was flying into. Now an hour and a half all the way over to Baltimore. So he drives out, picks me up. Everything goes well. He says, yes, you can marry my daughter. I said, that's really good news. Now I got to get back on the plane and head back to DC. I fly from Baltimore back here. I'm back in time. I saw her that night. She had no clue. Not an idea. Now, can you imagine how hard it would have been to navigate all of all those issues, all those problems, if there was no flight crew? If it was just me and an airplane, I wouldn't have ever gotten off the ground. There wouldn't have been anybody on the speaker to say, hey, we're having some malfunctions. We need you to get off the plane. Yeah, and that was bad news then, but can you imagine if I would have sat there 4 hours longer with that same problem? Or what about the person that was standing behind the desk helping me book a different ticket to Baltimore instead of DC? Or what about the captains who fly the plane? Or the stewardesses who make you feel comfortable and help you feel at home while you're on the flight and take care of you both going out there and coming back? If there was no flight crew, I would have never made it to my destination. Now here's where this hits home for us. If there was no flight crew for our church, we would never get to our destination. And the problem is, too many of us see ourselves as just passengers along for the ride in this thing called church. In fact, many people in this city even think they shouldn't even be on this flight. They don't belong on this airplane. Why even book a ticket? Many of us in this room are pretty convinced church is just the place that we show up to on Sunday morning. Everything's kind of handed to us on a platter. I can show up a few minutes late, check out a few minutes early, go home and go about my work, my week as I would any other week. And yet, I guarantee you what God has for us today is a challenge to show each and every one of us that you are called to be a part of God's flight crew, if you will. If we're going on this trajectory, if we have this flight plan of going to connect disconnected people, to become a rippling movement of communities where everyday people follow Jesus together, if that's where we're heading, and if that's the plane we're flying, then all of us need to be all hands on deck, a part of this flight crew, helping others jump aboard, if you will. So let's catch a glimpse of this in Scripture. If you would open up your app on your phone, or if you brought a Bible, open up to Revelation chapter 21 this morning. Revelation chapter 21. We'll have it up on the screen for you as well. Revelation chapter 21, beginning in verse 1. Now what's amazing is in here, in these few verses, it's not so much a command from God for you to be on the team or on the flight crew, if you will, but it paints an image for us that will help us understand what this trajectory looks like. Okay? Follow along with me. We're just going to skim through these first 8 verses, and then we're going to jump right in. Okay? John is writing this. This is the revelation that Jesus has given him of what heaven will be like, what the afterlife will look like, and all those things. So he gives us a picture of this in Revelation chapter 21, verse 8. Okay? It says, "Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no longer any sea. I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride beautifully dressed for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, 'Now the dwelling of God is with men, and he will live with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God.'" And then check out this glimpse of heaven that he gives us here in verse 4. This beautiful painting of what life is going to be like for us, for all who follow Jesus. He says in verse 4, "He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death, or mourning, or crying, or pain, for the old order of things has passed away." He who is seated on the throne said, "I am making everything new." Then he said, "Write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true." He said to me, "It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To him who is thirsty, I will give to drink without cost from the spring of the water of life. He who overcomes will inherit all this, and I will be his God, and he will be my son. I'll pause there for just a second. In this passage, we get an incredible glimpse, even an awesome or awe-inspiring glimpse of what the church will one day look like. All the people who follow Jesus, confess him as Lord, what they will get to experience. And it's this beautiful reunion of all the followers of Jesus reunited with their God in person, all together around the throne of God. And you can just imagine it, what it looks like. And if you were to read other passages in the book of Revelation, you would see how just glorious this would be, and how we will all be covered in white robes, made pure and completely whole, and there's no more weeping or gnashing of teeth or pain or struggle or addiction or hardship. That all of that is overcome, and you, your soul, and everything in you is finally satisfied. You have no more want, no more need. There's nothing else you could even desire, because it's all been given to you now in this inheritance that you've been given in heaven. And John uses this incredible language in the book of Revelation to paint this picture for us of what that will one day look like. But if you're like me, you kind of just wrestle with, well, that's really good for then, but what about now? Like, God, don't you care about what my life looks like right now? Don't you care about what our city looks like right now? Don't you care about the pains and struggles that I'm going through right now? What's amazing about this is that God calls us to be people who paint this kind of picture, this picture of hope, this picture of beauty where there's no more weeping or gnashing or crying or anything like that. No more pain, no more addiction, so that we, while we live in this day, are always having our eyes fixed on what is yet to come, something that is far greater. I heard this illustration of this passage that really kind of puts some meat on the bones for me, and maybe it will for you too. Imagine, if you will, that you were in this boxed-in room. And there was one window in this room, no doors, just completely walled up, every side of you, one window. But on every wall and all over the floor is garbage and filth, grunge, nastiness, and it's not just kind of covering the walls. This grime isn't just dusted on there, but it's inches thick. All this filth and nastiness, and it's just, you're stepping in it, it's on the walls, it's even on that window. And you can't see through the window. You don't know what's on the other side of that window. You can't see anything through it at all. And all you know, everything that surrounds you, is just dirt and grime and filth and nastiness. But on the other side of that wall, and on the other side of that window, even though you can't see it, is the incredible, beautiful creation of the sunrise. And the sun is just coming up over the horizon, and it's turning the sky deep shades of blue and purple and orange. And the light is just piercing through everything, and it's just glorious. It just radiates everywhere, and there's this incredible image, incredible masterpiece that is the sunrise. In fact, birds are chirping, and life is springing up all over the place. It's green everywhere, and it's just healthy and fresh. And it's so beautiful. You can't imagine that there's something like that, because you, for all of your life, all you've ever known is the inside of this filthy, nasty, grimy room. But let's pretend for just a moment that you did know that there was a beautiful, glorious sunrise just on the other side of that window. and you know what's out there. You know of what's coming. And you're in this room with a friend, a son, a daughter, a family member, a neighbor, somebody that you know. They've never seen that. Because all they've ever seen is just this room of filth. What would you want to do for that person? What would you want to do? This is when you can answer the question. It's okay. What would you want to do for that person?
Open the window.
You break the window, you clean the window, right? You somehow get them to see what's out there because you want them to know there's something else. There's something more than just this room of filth and darkness. And so what you do is you go to that window and you just start to clean off a little bit of the window. And you can't just smear it, but you're like moving this stuff that's caked on the window, just getting a little bit of a glimpse. And as you get through the levels and layers of all this dirt and grime and filth, light starts to pierce through the window into your room, and there's this beam of hope shining in. And the person that you're there with, who has never seen light, let alone the colors and the birds and all of creation, has never seen this, when they get to see that, everything changes for them, doesn't it? Their imagination changes. What they long to create and design changes because now they've seen something that they never even thought could possibly exist. Friends, being on the flight crew, being a part of a church, it's not just about getting on the plane. But it's about cleaning away the window so that our neighbors, our friends, our coworkers might just see that there is something far more beautiful than what they've been exposed to. For us to be on the flight crew together doesn't always mean that that you're the one making coffee, or you're the one standing over at the Connect table, or you're the one serving the kids backstage here. Doesn't mean that you're necessarily doing those things, although it could, and I would encourage you to be a part of that. But it most certainly means that you and I are always cleaning away the window so that the people around us wouldn't be introduced to oppressive religion, but might see just how beautiful, might catch just a glimpse of what life with Jesus really looks like. So that they might see what we read in Revelation chapter 21, that this is real, that Jesus really is coming back for us. And that when he comes back, it's going to be the most beautiful and glorious thing. But I guarantee you that John did not write down his revelation from God so that you and I might only know what is to come, but so that you and I would also be challenged to lead other people to catch glimpses of what is to come in the here and now in our everyday lives. So I want to give you just two things that really being a part of the flight crew means for us and how you can be a part of that. What it looks like for us to clean away the window. So you might want to just jot these things down. We've got notepads on the tables for you so you can take these things home and kind of pray over them and chew on it this week. But really, there's just two things of what it means to be a part of the flight crew, not just of Rhythm City Church. If you have a church home, you can do these things there. In fact, to be honest, most of these things, these two things, don't really happen for us on Sunday morning, but these are a call for us to be the church outside the doors and walls of even a bar on Sunday morning or a sanctuary somewhere else on Sunday morning. But this is how God stirs through us to clean away the window, if you will, in the lives of our friends. And starts really with us understanding who Jesus is. And so in just a moment, I'll give you those two things, but really what it is that we've come and what God has put us in this place for is to know that He is the God of all creation and that He reigns and rules over all things. That in every part of your life, you are called to acknowledge that our God reigns over everything. There is nothing that He does not reign or rule over. With His grace and His power, with His mercy and His justice. And it all starts with Jesus, His reign, His rule over all things. Now here's the two things. As people who follow Jesus, we are called to do two things. One, announce the reign and rule of God in Jesus. And secondly, demonstrate the reign and rule of God in Jesus. Here's what we mean by that. Announcing. Sometimes people in our lives, in fact, probably all the time, people in our lives are just waiting to hear some good news. Everybody in this room, everybody in this city, everyone in the world loves good news. And the best news that I know, and the best news that I can give anyone, is that God doesn't expect you to be perfect, because Jesus already was for you. And so you can have everything that's His. I don't know anywhere else where you're just freely given something like that. So it's our job to announce that, to share good news with people. The way that we really kind of get to the bottom of that is you have to ask yourself the question, why is Jesus good news for me? Like, do I really need Jesus, or is He just kind of a religious crutch that I can lean on every once in a while? Why is Jesus good news for me? And as you wrestle with that, you see how Jesus shows up in your life. You read in Scripture the promises that He gives for people like you in the circumstances that you're in, and why He is good news. As you learn why Jesus is good news for you, you're then able to give that away. You say, you know what? I don't know what you're going through in your life. I'm not here to judge you. But man, I've experienced some really good news in my life. I'm living differently because of it. I'm living with joy and hope and peace, even in the middle of all these details and circumstances and stuff that's going crazy in my life. I can live with peace because Jesus gives me peace. So one, we announce the reign and rule of God. But if you want to know what the reign and rule of God looks like, it looks like Revelation chapter 21. Where God is completely in control and Satan no longer has any kind of authority in heaven. There will be no weeping, no gnashing of teeth, no pain, no suffering, no struggles, no addictions, none of that. And so God calls us to demonstrate what that will one day look like in our present here and now today. If someone is lonely, do you think they'll be lonely in heaven? Do you think that'll be the case? No, they're not going to be lonely in heaven. So how God calls us to demonstrate His reign and rule in their lives is to be with them. To let them know you're not alone in this journey. And to let them know that God is actually with you in this journey. For someone who is For someone who is struggling with addiction, do you think they'll struggle with that in heaven? No. Because there is none of that in heaven. So what God calls us to do is to show them and help them overcome that. Because if God's reign and rule is just as true then, it's just as true today. There's an amazing story about a man who went to Cambodia. He's a pastor. Went over there to lead a conference of other pastors and Cambodian pastors. And in this room that's above a bakery and in the 100-degree heat and 100% humidity in Cambodia, by the way, above a bakery room is probably not the best place to be when it's that hot, right? no air conditioning, hardly any breeze blowing. It's this guy leading the conference and probably about 50 pastors from Cambodia all in this room packed in to hear him speak. And he tells the story like this. He says, all the pastors were in the room, and each and every single one of them looked the same. They all had these blue dress pants with nice shoes, and they all had a white collared shirt buttoned up all the way and sleeves all the way down the side, and they all had glasses on, and they all had their hair parted on the side just like that, and they all looked the same. He said all the pastors looked like accountant pastors. They all just looked the same. They looked like they were there for business. But in the back of this room was one guy with a scraggly beard, probably in his 30s, and remember how hot it is, wearing a leather jacket with heavy jeans, boots, just looks like a bad dude, you know? And he's sitting in the back of the room, the guy's speaking, he sees him, and he says, hey, maybe this guy's never heard of Jesus before, you know, because he looks pretty rough. He must not be a Jesus follower, which, by the way, you can look like anything and still follow Jesus. And you're safe here, by the way. So he goes on to tell the story, and he says, in one of the intermissions, that guy came up and talked to him. He said, I noticed you're here, but you don't look like everybody else. Do you live in the city? Actually, yeah, I'm a Christian. Oh my goodness, you're a Christian. Oh, you really don't look like it. You don't look like everybody else here, but you're a Christian? I'm a Christian. Awesome. Well, welcome, brother. Glad you're here, you know. And then he goes on a little bit farther in the conversation, finds out this guy's a pastor. He's a pastor. Wow. Where do you serve? Well, actually, my story's kind of interesting. About 10 years ago, I was about in the worst place you could possibly be. I was a thief and a smuggler, and what I would do is I'd go over the border into Thailand, and I'd go over and steal a whole bunch of stuff, bring it back here, and I'd sell it in the markets for way higher prices, and I'd steal and make money off of it. Until one day, one of his competitors ratted him out to the police, and the police came and found him, and he was just able to escape, and he ran away, and he was in hiding. And he's at rock bottom, if you will. He can't keep doing this, and it's all that he knows to do. And so he starts praying, because, I mean, where else can he go but God in that situation? So he starts praying, and he says he heard the audible voice of God say, if that's the only job that you knew how to do, then the only job that I can teach you how to do is to be a pastor. Isn't that amazing that God would take someone with that kind of history and make him a pastor? So he said, one day I went down and I was looking throughout the city for a job, and I went to ministries and churches and tried to get a job somewhere. You know, will you let me be a pastor here? I'll serve in any way you want. Sorry, we don't take your kind here. You know, because he looked rough, and wearing the leather jacket and all that stuff. And he'd go to another place, and can I be on the ministry team here? And he'd say, no, really, you won't fit here. And he went to place and place and place, and everywhere turned him down. And finally, he goes to this riverbank site and says, God, you've called me to be a pastor. I can't do anything else. What in the world am I supposed to do? Where is my church? And the second that he said that, this across the riverbank, this military convoy rolls up. And on the other side of the riverbank is this slum in Cambodia. And it's a slum because this area usually floods because it's right along the river. And there's this hillside that when it rains, there's oftentimes mudslides. And so nobody else wants this land, but the poor people will take it. So they had built up kind of shacks on stilts, if you will. And this military convoy rolls up, gets on a loudspeaker, and tells everybody, we're moving you out of here. We are going to take over this land and build up our buildings. You have 30 minutes to grab all your possessions, all of your family members, hop in the truck, and we're moving you to a different space. And he said it was mass chaos. You hear mothers crying out for their children who are playing in other people's homes, and you see everybody scurrying to gather up everything that they can and everything that they can carry with them. And in 30 minutes, sure enough, They were off, and the bulldozers were right behind them and bulldozed everything. Can you imagine if somebody did that to your home? Came into your neighborhood and said that? Literally, that happened right after he prayed that prayer. And he heard God say again, "There goes your church." So he hops on his moped and he follows behind this convoy through the streets of this town in Cambodia, out past the airport, out past the rice fields, and now we're getting way out there, and this is really mosquito-infested area where you can get malaria and all kinds of diseases. Out past the rice paddies, into this area that was just swamp marshland, where as soon as the trucks stopped along this road and people hopped out of the trucks, they stepped in, and it was dry season, and up to their ankles, mud and filth and water. It was just like that for as far as the eye could see. And the military leader said, "This is where you will live now." So everybody unloads off the trucks, and they're just standing there thinking, how are we going to live here? Trucks move on. This guy in the moped sees all these people displaced, gets on his moped, turns around, goes back past the rice paddies, past the airport, into the town that they just came from, gets his wife, who was pregnant at the time, says to his wife, "Honey, I found a job." And they get everything, they get on the moped, him and his wife, their soon-to-be-born baby, head on the moped back out of that area. And you know what he does? He doesn't start preaching at them. Instead he says, "God, if you really are ruling and reigning over all these things, then one day in heaven, I believe we will all be standing on dry ground. So if I want people here to catch a glimpse of what it'll one day be like, then it makes sense to make some dry ground." And so him and the villagers, over the course of weeks and months, built this system to drain all the water out of there. Finally, they had dry ground. And he says, "You know what? There are a lot of people who are sick here. And I know that in the Bible it says that one day when we're all in heaven, there won't be any sickness." So he goes into the village close by, goes to every medical center that he can, and gets medical nurses and doctors and any kind of staff to come out and start giving medicines and stuff to the people there. And once a week or every day or how often he could get them out there, he brought medical staff out there and demonstrated for them what the reign and rule of God looks like. And he says, we're going to have great homes someday. In fact, it even says that Jesus is going before us to heaven to prepare a room for us. So let's build some homes for these folks. And over the course of a couple of years, he finds a church. Because he showed up to announce the reign and rule of God and to demonstrate what it looks like. So that people would see that Jesus is not just some kind of religious crutch, but a God who is in the act of restoring all of creation back to himself, giving glimpses of what heaven will one day be like. And he's calling you to be on that team. It's so much more than just showing up early to help. And while that is a huge thing for us to do, and while it's great for us to be here on Sunday mornings, God's mission for us is far greater than just what happens on Sunday morning. So I'm calling you to just respond to how God is stirring in you right now. In fact, what we're going to do now, just kind of go into a few moments where you're just going to be given permission to respond. Maybe for you that's just listening a little bit more. Maybe for you it's writing down what you know is the next step. Maybe for you it's just to spend a few moments in prayer. Maybe for you it's writing a word up on the word board that's back by the door where you can just say, this is what God is having me take home this week. Maybe God's calling you to demonstrate his reign and rule in somebody else's life. And so you want to write down what that action step looks like for you.